80, we living babies. Took a grown man and old man. Karma so bad we still haven't seen our homeland. There's this thing called Scar, baby.
Watch the way you chit chat.
You can twist your wild.
What you put out, you get back.
You gotta watch
For all
what you
the
put
joy
out in the
and
universe.
sorrow. Give it today, get it
The
tomorrow.
energy you project, that flex of the lip. It can hem your whole aura or just make you flip. It's the law of the spirit world. Do you believe in lies? Hell no, brother. I was waking by the wise. Smile when you wanna cry, fake your enemies. Put on your mask, never wear your heart on your sleeve. Believe when I tell you all, better call your father. And listen when he show you what he know about karma. Do unto others how you gon' be treated. Watch your mouth, hottie, don't give nobody hate it. Feel like a cheater. Do the life's penetration. Then what would Christ do in the likely situation? Walk the straight line, don't let the devil beat you. Cause he just wanna dead you, kill you, and cold eat you. Swallow your whole, flesh and soul. Follow your goal, never let go. Heaven knows, learn the way, know this. But if you live by the knife, you might get your throat slit. It's karma, baby.
Watch the way you chit chat.
It's karma.
What you put out, you get back.
It's karma, y'all.
For all the joy and sorrow.
It's karma.
Give it today, get it tomorrow. What you gonna do? She's coming for you. Mama, watch the way you chat.
Yeah. It be the universal law of what goes around comes back to the sender. So y'all should all remember, smoke crack today, you might just die tomorrow. Before you touch that pipe, you'll think about the horror. Sorry be the men who plot devious acts. Your karma got a knapsack, handing ish back like Adam and Eve. Pandora in the box, unorthodox paradox, set it like clocks. 360 degrees be the circular chain. Now if you don't think shady, you can stop at 180. We living babies, took a grown man and old man. Karma so bad we still haven't seen our homeland. It's so sad, simple and plain. Real the truth, it can ease your pain. Know what I'm saying? Many were slain, so put on the whole armor and listen when we tell you about, well, you know, it's karma, baby.
Watch the way you chit chat.
It's karma.
What you put out, you get back.
It's karma, y'all.
For all the joy and sorrow.
It's karma.
Give it today, get it tomorrow. Karma, watch the way you talk.
Yeah. I know a chick who gave an ugly stare. And yo, 2 years later lost all her hair. I know a cat who used to drink and smoke. Then he later on died from cancer of the throat. There was a thug who used to steal and rob. He got his life together, then the cat stole his job. I had a friend who gave a bum a dime. Now that friend of mine is fine and his bank account shines. Calm.
She's so persistent.
It's karma, baby.
Watch the way you chit chat.
It's karma.
What you put out, you get back.
It's karma, y'all.
For all the joy and sorrow.
It's karma.
Give it today, get it tomorrow. I got a feeling. I got a feeling.
Sweat blood and tears, karma, sweat blood until you sweat, sweat blood until you sweat, sweat blood until you sweat blood and tears, karma, sweat blood until you sweat, sweat blood until you sweat, sweat blood until you sweat blood and tears, karma.
Peace. Welcome everyone to another segment of Thunderground Thursday on enlightenment and transformation. As many of you know, this is our first Thursday. Of course, we're in the month of November. I think it's our first, or did we do it last strong? But we're just broadcasting solely on YouTube. So I hope those of you who are normally or used to listening to us on Blog Talk Radio. I'm almost forgetting the name already. I'm so ready to say goodbye. I'm forgetting the name. But I hope you all have made that transition. And for those who maybe have not, and just let them know. So there's no grand panic, and everybody knows what happened. So again, it's only the strong day shows, the Monday through Friday shows, that are broadcasting solely on YouTube, and the other one, Chief Speaks specifically, will still be on Blog Talk as well as YouTube. Okay, but you can still interact with us or interact with me even right now. Of course, I'm broadcasting via a Google Hangout. So all you have to do is, if you're watching the video, you're going to see a little link to the lower left where it asks you if you would like to participate in the conversation. You can click that, it'll open up a Hangout, and then you can just ask your questions. There's a little grid there in the upper right, and it gives you the option for showcase or Q&A. If you hit that, I'll see your question pop up. Okay, so I know it's going to take a while to get used to it, and I know it may take a couple of months for everyone to get accustomed to the way we're doing things, but this is better. This is better for me, and this is better for you. All right, and also I want to let you guys know, I know that there were some questions that came in last strong on the shows, and I didn't get to them on the shows actually, but I'm going to answer them tomorrow. I looked at them all, and they were all pretty much spiritual questions, so I want to cover those on Foundational Friday. There was a question that came in about when we did the Spiritual Baptist show, about why they call it Shango Baptist, and some other ones that came in. So I didn't forget you guys. I didn't miss it. I'm going to get to it. All right. So yeah, we're here with another segment. And as always, I want to welcome everyone who is listening live right now, and I also want to say peace and power to everyone who is going to be listening to this later, maybe tomorrow, day after, maybe 5 years from now, who knows? But welcome to this experience, and welcome to this learning community that we call Enlightenment and Transformation, but more respectfully, our new spiritual order. All right. But yeah, so this segment, I wanted to cover a few things. Oh, and let me give a shout out to all of you who attended the Alchemy webinar. Told you it was going to be good. All right. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. People really enjoyed it. And, definitely send it in. You can always comment on the video for that particular webinar. There was like a general video that went out that we put an announcement out for. You can always leave your comments and stuff right there. That's always good. Let the world see. That's a form of sharing, and that helps us. When you share, when you say, yeah, this was good because of this, because of that, whatever. Because, when you have your hands inside of something and you're close to it, it's like when you're cooking something, usually want somebody else to come taste it. How does this taste to you? Because you've been tasting and preparing and tasting and preparing, tasting and preparing for so long that now your taste buds are coated. Your tongue is coated. So you can't, it doesn't really hit you the same way. But when somebody comes in with an uncoated tongue and a nice clean palate, and they experience what it is that you're doing, you can get some feedback that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of. Maybe it's just some of the things that are impacting, you wouldn't have even thought that those were the impacting things. So please, we always urge you guys to share your comments, and you have been doing that. Thank you for that. Share your comments on the shows and whatnot, and let the world know what we're doing, because we're not a marketing or promotional heavy group. That's not really what we do too much of. We're not out there letting everybody know ourselves, because we're busy putting our work towards our study and our scholarship, so that way we can give you good product. All right. So, that's an excellent way to help. But I just wanted to, either way, just give a shout out to those of you who came through and enjoyed it, and, all that good stuff. It was a great webinar. And, of course, be on the lookout for the ones that are coming in 2016. All right. So we're going to just keep upping the quality of everything. That's my goal, just to keep making everything better. Not necessarily bigger and better, but definitely better. That's the goal. All right. But kind of brings me, it's kind of surrounded to what I wanted to speak on tonight. And, I'm so used to now. I mean, I've only done those live shows on Blog Talk for a couple of strongs. I was getting ready to give the phone number out. I'm used to doing that now, but that's kind of what I'm talking about tonight. Adaptation. I wanted to speak on that a little bit. adapting / adaptation, because it's a very slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope, when you're coming into the place of learning how to re-engineer something so that it's more effective, or you're trying to come into a place where you're trying to learn how to adapt something so that it serves a greater use or serves a greater value, and I wanted to just speak on some of the mental conditioning or the mental awareness and mental toughness that one has to have before they even begin that process of trying to adapt to something or whatever, right? Oh, and let me give you a heads up. Well, actually, no, we'll come back to that later. I won't talk about that right now. Yeah, I got a lot between tonight and Sunday. I had a lot that I want to share with you all. I want to share with the learning family. And I gotta pace it out. That's what this whole thing is about. I'm telling you, like this whole march and movement towards self-development, when you're trying to build something, it's all about pacing and planning. Especially when you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like you got everything on your shoulders. 9 times out of 10 is because you're not respecting your own pace. You're looking around you and you think things are moving much faster than they actually are. And you want to speed to the finish line because you don't realize this is a marathon. So, it's not about racing to the finish. It's about taking those steady strides. It's like when you're driving somewhere, you can speed, you can do 100 miles an hour, then slow down to 40, 100, slow down to 40. But if you could just keep a steady 60 or a steady 7 or 60, right? But a steady 70 or 75, you get there sooner. Consistency is the key, but that pacing planning is critical. But, like I said, a lot of things are changing. And in order to keep pace with change and make sure that we're still fulfilling our purpose here at the New Spiritual Order, we have to adapt to certain things. Okay. Like a good example, one of the slides that comes up while I'm speaking right now is from a little lecture I did. I think I was in Texas at that time. And somebody had seen it once and they were like, man, you were right in the camera. Like they had the camera right up in your face. And I was like, yeah, but that's actually a good thing, because people nowadays, it's not like back in the days where people are looking at their TV from 10 feet, across the room or more. Most people are looking at their TV on their tablets or their phones. So you have to have an image, because the screen is so much smaller. They may be looking at whatever you're doing on a 5-inch screen or a 7-inch screen, or if it's a tablet, maybe an 11-inch screen. So, the way we fill up a frame now, a video frame, we have to have a different mind than what we did 10 years ago when everybody wasn't looking at everything on their phones and their tablets. See, that's a form of adaptation. You're now shooting for the medium that it's going to be delivered on, most likely, are phones and tablets. Even like, because I like to look at the analytics of like the shows a lot, and it, in the analytics, it shows you what people are tuning in from. So to show me if people are tuning in from desktop computers or if they're mainly tuning in from mobile browsers, which obviously is going to be a phone or a tablet. And it's usually overwhelmingly people are listening to these segments through mobile browsers. So that right there makes me say, okay, based on that, how will I adapt what it is that I'm doing to accommodate this new phenomenon of mobile media? You see? So, I mean, that's like just a small example of what we're kind of going to get into a little bit. But, I wanted to speak on adaptation because I'm finding so many situations with individuals where they're just out of step, not necessarily with themselves. Sometimes you're out of step with yourself and you can feel it. Like, I don't feel like myself. I feel like something is off. And then there's times when you're just out of step with your contextual environment, and I tell a lot of people, especially those of you who sometimes call me and I say, well, let's talk about life purpose and stuff. And let's talk about your gifts. And people say, I don't have any gifts. There's nothing that I can do. And then I'll say, well, do you understand the science of appropriateness? Do you know what to do at the right time and what not to do? Do you understand the concept that there's a time and place for everything? And are you a good adherent of that? And if a person says yes, I say, well, that's a spiritual talent. Because in order to have that realization or that cognition, that form of cognition, you have to be able to have situational awareness. You got to know what's going on in your environment and what the environment calls for, what the proper fit is for that particular environment. You see, and not everybody has that. A lot of people don't have that. You'd be surprised. A lot of people can't read what's going on in the moment. A lot of people don't know how to flow with the moment, or they don't know how to approach people, who to approach a certain way. You go through obviously we can go through the whole list, and that's because they lack that gift. Always remember, your talents are your body appendages. So talents are not these special magical things that only 3 or 4 people have. That's not a talent. Your talent is your ability to utilize your full brain to body extension. Now, obviously being able to utilize that 100% puts you in a totally different, nobody can, at least nobody I know can do that. If you were able to function with complete and total connectivity between brain and mind, you would never forget anything. You'd be able to heal extremely quickly. It would probably be very hard to kill you as well. There'd be a lot of quote unquote superpowers that would come along with that. But, we're striving for that. We're striving to control and subdue the animal nature with the divine nature. And, we all have a bestial aspect. One of the reasons we know that is because of this simple thing. Many of us don't like change. And the desire to keep things as they are, even though it's an egoic desire to keep things the way they are, that really speaks to the animal nature. If you understand anything about the animal kingdom, they'll adapt to an environment, not because they want to keep up with the environment. Well, let me put it this way. They'll adapt to an environment not because they want to keep up with what the world is doing, but an animal will adapt to an environment because they feel that environment is going to be their place of activity forever until they die. That's the animal mind. Okay. So, and I'm not talking esoterically or metaphysically. I'm talking biology now. Okay. So that's why you'll see certain adaptations in the animal kingdom. Because they always want to adapt. If you put them in, for instance, for any of you who are if you have fish lovers, people, a lot of you guys have fish tanks and stuff like that. Many of you know, depending on the size of the tank, that will determine the size that your fish will grow to. So like you can buy a mini shark, and if you put a mini shark in a smaller tank, it won't grow beyond its space of comfort for that actual tank. If you get a 55-gallon tank and put a mini shark in there, it's going to grow to a certain length. It's not going to be, it's not going to be hanging out the side of the tank like talking on the phone when you come home and, reaching for the refrigerator. But if you put it in a 150-gallon tank, it's going to grow bigger because it recognizes that its environment can accommodate that level of growth. You see? So it has the mindset that I'm always going to be in this environment. So any adaptation that I undergo has to be significant to this one and only environment. And if you change that environment, you run the risk of killing that animal. Some animals die from shock when you move them out of environment. Okay. Now, sadly, many of us have the same approach when it comes to adaptation. We sometimes our adaptation can be our greatest downfall. Our willingness to always fit into what's happening in the environment right now. And sometimes that adaptation comes because we don't understand that there's a contextual environment that we have to study and examine first before we move towards any form of adaptation, which sometimes we falsely label evolution. Okay, so you may be in an environment, you may say, hey, these are modern times, these are changing times, we need to do things like this, even when it comes to your spirituality. Okay, a lot of people will say, oh man, you don't have to do all of that stuff anymore. Like, there's some things, of course, you don't have to do anymore. I tell you that all the time. Some things you do still have to do, though. So people say, oh, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do it. All you have to do is go into within yourself, because within yourself is all the answers and that, you know, all that stuff. Well, you didn't come up with that. That is not of your invention. You got that from this backward society. They told you to think like that. You see, go within. All answers lie within. Meanwhile, they're hoarding up all of the sacred scriptures and scrolls and sacred languages from around the world that they possibly can, while mass media tells you to look within. You see, so sometimes we'll adapt to that without looking at the bigger thing that's going on. And now our spirituality will begin to reflect that same notion, that same idea. We become hard of hearing. We become hard-headed. Nothing can get through now because all the answers are within. And like I've said before, if that was the case, then you wouldn't need to come to Earth and interact with other people. You would have just stayed in the ether. You wouldn't need to condense down into a physical form, into a solid. If all the answers were already within, you condense down, like I said before, so that you could relate to yourself. Ether needed to relate to shapes and forms, triangles, squares, circles, hexagons. These are all of the shapes and forms that create our reality. We needed to relate to those shapes. You see? So sometimes adaptation can be dangerous if you don't approach it with the right spirit and with the right heart. But adaptation is always necessary, as change is something that's always necessary in a constant of the cosmos. You can't get around change. I know a lot of times we try to, but you got to realize, like I said, I think it was Sunday or Friday, Thursday, I don't remember. One of the shows, I think it was Thursday or Friday, where I shared that in dealing with particle physics, you understand that what changes particles is the passage of time. So we know that time is always marching and moving on. And unfortunately, when you don't respect that marching and that movement of time, you become a victim to sudden events and sudden occurrences. You become a victim of that looming spirit of sudden death because you've squandered away time. The one commodity that you cannot get back. You've squandered it. So now that spirit starts to loom over you, you know, you could die any day. You go out in your car today, you get killed, or a piano could drop on your head and break your neck, or whatever. You know, you become a victim to that because you haven't kept pace. So then when you finally come to that realization, oh man, I should have been keeping pace, you start to race and run ahead, trying to catch this elusive best you. Catch this elusive life purpose, my purpose. And all you have to really do, you know, you could jump in at any time. You could jump into that flow of time at any moment, you know. So when we speak about the change of life and as things move and evolve through life, you got to understand that we're experiencing that change because we're also sharing our speed. Like I mentioned before, we're sharing our light speed with a three-dimensional reality because light fell into the darkness. The darkness is your body or your melanin construct. Okay. So because you have a three-dimensional body now, you feel time. You sit somewhere long enough, what happens? You start getting stiff, or you know, your behind falls asleep or whatever. You realize, oh, I've been sitting here for a long time. You start walking for a long time. What happens? Oh, I'm getting tired. Your body reminds you of the passage of time. And one of the things that sometimes we don't realize is that your body is just like a set of clothes, right? Many people, I'm not going to say everyone because I don't know everybody in the world, but most people that I've met have not wanted to wear the same exact set of clothes every day, even if they wore the same thing. I mean, sometimes you have a job, you working every day, you got to wear a uniform, but you don't want to wear the same exact uniform every day. Some people, right? Because you understand that I have to change clothes at sometimes. Sometimes the clothes that I'm wearing don't fit the environment that I'm in. Sometimes I outgrow my clothes, or I wear my clothes out. Well, now, can you take that same understanding and apply it to your body? Because your body is nothing but clothes for your soul. That's it. It wears out. You know, it becomes outdated as things around it, as the environment around it changes, and things speed up. Your body sometimes is just, you know, it evolves to something else, or, you know, you shed that body and take on a new one in another lifetime that's more suited for the times. Yeah. You know, I remember there was a time not long ago. What do you mean? 2015? I'd say 20, 25 years ago, where there was a whole race of females that had pancake behinds. None. Not at all. Now, that same group, you have this anomaly that's popped up where they actually have like badunks, behinds, you know? Things are changing now. We can say, oh, it's the hormones and the this and that. Yeah, it could be. Or things are changing. People are evolving into something else. They're completing their development, perhaps. So the idea here of, or the idea of really adapting to the times, you got to understand that the idea of adaptation means to fit or to purpose with the times, or the purpose with the environment. When you're adapting something, it means that you're fitting it to something so that way it could serve a purpose. That's actually what adaptation means. Okay, to fit to something, or to join to something. Atare or adapt, which is Latin, means to join, and at means to. So to join, right? So you're joining something so that it can serve a certain purpose. Okay, that's the purpose of adaptation. Now, you have to always make sure, that's why you step back with your good eye and you look at your contextual environment and you determine, am I adapting to something that serves a purpose, a higher purpose, or am I adapting to death culture? See, that's why you have to examine the environment, because some might say, oh, all the answers are inside. Right. That's kind of a form of self-idolatry. So if I'm adapting to your idea, I have to also look at, how eternal is this idea? Is this idea headed for destruction? You know, like one of the things that Sister Kim showed during the webinar, which was funny, she showed some old advertisements. One was for asthma cigarettes. They had this line of cigarettes out that was it was just regular cigarettes that was supposed to cure asthma. Right? It's obviously hilarious. And one of the things that is said on it was, you know, not for use for children under 6 years old. So your child was 8 or 9 years old, they had asthma, you give them a cigarette to smoke. So there was a time when people in this country believed that cigarettes cured asthma. Oh, and it was also for bad breath, to cure bad breath and a couple other things, right? So if you were not looking at that with your good eye at that time, you may adapt to that, and you're adapting into a death culture. Because you know that there were people at the time saying, this is crazy. This doesn't make any sense. Just like there's people now that are looking at things and saying, that's crazy. Like some of you may be familiar with the rapper Waka Flocka, and the fire that he came under recently because he was on a radio show. And he was just speaking about things that are going on in the world and things that we expose children to. And the statement that he made, he spoke about Bruce Jenner. And he said that, you know, Bruce Jenner parading himself as a female is evil. You know, that's just pure evil. And of course, he came under a lot of flame, no pun intended, but he came under a lot of fire as a result. And he didn't necessarily take his statement back, but I guess he went on to explain it a little further in subsequent interviews. But this is an individual who's saying, I'm going to adapt to some things. I'm a rapper, I'm young, I'm doing what's hot, blah 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 blah, but some of these things I'm not interested in adapting to. I'm not interested in fitting into that machine because it doesn't speak to my higher purpose. Okay, so when you're looking at the idea of adaptation and you're afraid to adapt, or you're only always looking to make changes that make sure that you can survive in your current contextual environment, that's when your animal form or your animal senses are ruling over your divine senses, which are always moving for an expansive and evolving truth. Your divine self or your higher self is always trying to change. That's why the spirit is represented by wind, because it's all over the place. And wind touches everything. You can't keep wind out of anywhere. You can't keep it out of, it just goes wherever it wants to go. And wherever you can keep wind out of is where you're able to freeze time, right? You want to take something and you want to freeze it forever. You remove all the wind out of it. You put it in a vacuum seal and it can last forever. A piece of food can last forever. You take the air out, because you've frozen time in that space, because you've disregarded and removed the spiritual movement from it. If there's spiritual movement, there's going to be change. And spiritual movement is always going to move around from environment to environment. The same way your soul moves from body to body. The same way you may look at something in your closet this year and say, you know what? I don't really wear this anymore. I can get, I don't think I'm going to wear a troop jacket again. Or this Sherlin hat, or I'm probably, or this fur Applejack. I'm not gonna wear a furry Kangol or Applejack anymore. I could probably get rid of this because it doesn't really fit the environment that I'm going into. It doesn't fit my new uniform or my new wardrobe for where I'm at now. So it's the same thing with your physical form. Your soul makes the same type of decisions when it has to make changes. And sometimes it will urge you to another environment so that your physical and your three-dimensional reality can evolve for that new environment that it needs to be in, so that way it can fit its higher purpose. This is adaptation. Dying is a form of adapting. Yeah. Dying is a form of adapting. Death is a form of adaptation. It's getting rid of the old clothes, the old body. Okay, it doesn't suit the purposes anymore because maybe I'm not as mobile as I was at one point, and I need to move around. I need to go explore the world. I need to do this and do that. All right, let me get rid of this one and get another one. Dying is a form of adaptation. And that's one of the things that we fight the most, that we're so afraid of, because that's the animal nature. So that's what sometimes we brag about that. Yeah, my animal instincts kicked in. I got the eye of the tiger. I remember Brother Damien was talking once in one of the shows, and he had shared that he had a supervisor years ago who, used to kind of hype him up, I guess, to sales or whatever. I forget what department he said he was in, and he would try to play Eye of the Tiger. He was like, yeah, that's a song I listen to hype me up. And, he was kind of like, well, I'm not really relating to that, but you find that a lot of times when you're being urged to push beyond something, or you're being urged to fight for something, there's an animal sense that's brought in. You even look at a lot of superheroes that are created. They receive their hero stamp through an infusion with some type of animal DNA. You should pay attention to that. It's kind of an important point. And that's an important thing to look at when you even think about genetically modified foods. Pay attention to Spider-Man and all the different ones who, Beastman. And that's why I always like the Black Panther series. I always found him very interesting because unlike other mutants, Black Panther had to fight for his spot. He had to actually earn it. They did that thing with Wakanda where they had to fight and determine who's going to be the next Black Panther. So his actual gifts are earned. That says something, But anyway, so yeah, the idea of adapting is really the idea of changing form so that way you could fit into the machine that drives towards your higher purpose. That's what adaptation is. And it's not, you don't want to confuse adaptation with conformity. Although cultural conformity is sometimes something that's necessary in order for you to go to the next space, or adapting to societal norms. That's kind of like what Waka Flocka said. Well, I see this as evil. A man walking around saying that he's a woman just because he feels feminine for a little while. So to me, that's evil. So being able to kind of hold your ground and take that consciousness to your next space, if it's your higher consciousness, is really what you're trying to do when you're doing all of this work. You're trying to take the valuable things that you've encountered and the things that you know are adaptable to the higher environment, and you're trying to take them with you. You don't want to necessarily leave them. Just like you may say, hey, I'm getting a whole new wardrobe. But if you have a belt that's a good belt, you probably will keep that belt. If you have good quality undershirts, you might say, well, I'm not going to throw away my undershirts. They're still good quality. The collar's fine or whatever. Or these are some good shoes here that I bought. They're quality. These are the shoes I want to be buried in. These are good shoes. So you have to kind of understand when you're bringing things of value to your next space, and when you're trying to hoard and bring everything with you. Most likely, whenever you're trying to do that and you're going into a new environment and people are teaching you new things, and your first response is, well, this is how I am. This is what I do. That's the beast in you flaring up. That's your animal genetics. Because the animal genetics are saying that if I go to another environment, what you don't see is that I'm inside of a bubble. And this contextual bubble or prison is what I carry with me wherever I go. So even though I may bounce around from different religions and different spiritual systems, I've never actually stepped outside of my proverbial environment, because I'm like the boy or the girl in a bubble. I'm never going to step outside of that. So I'm just going to make sure that any environment that I go into will adapt to my bubble. And if the environment doesn't adapt to my bubble, then I'll move to another environment. Now, how often do you see that? Think about that. How often do you work at a job, or you're a part of an organization or a spiritual group, or even a family, where people want to bring all of their old psychosis into the environment, and then they resent you for not accommodating they're crazy. They bring their bubble and they say, okay, boom, they plop their bubble down in the middle of your organization and say, okay, now deal with it. And when you say, nah, and you start to roll the bubble out the door, they resent you for that. But they'll just keep rolling, and they'll go on to the next place and do the same thing. They're dealing with their animal nature more than their divine nature. This is death for a leader. This is death for a leader. Okay. You have to have not only a great sense of navigation through various landscapes, but you have to have the ability to shed your clothes at the drop of a hat. You have to have that. You have to be able to bear yourself naked at the drop of a hat. So many rituals occur skyclad. Because in bearing those clothes, you're inviting a new set of clothes to come to you. Just like in the spiritual Baptist, mourning is a key piece. Mourning is a key theme when you're dealing with spiritual Baptists or Shango. There's a lot of dying ceremonies that emulate dying. When you go to the water and you're baptized, they focus more on the dying aspect than the resurrected aspect. Because you got to get rid of those old clothes. Those have to be taken off and thrown away. Because we need a new set of clothes to accommodate the giant. Now, what are your clothes? Metaphorically. Your clothes are the culture that you clothe yourself with. Within that culture sits knowledge. Obviously, knowledge of self. but that's your clothing. And sometimes we want to maintain a culture that accommodates the sickness. And we rebel against letting go of those clothes, having those clothes cut up and ripped up and torn to shreds. And we just wait until we grow so much that we just can't fit them to anymore, and the buttons start popping off. And that's always painful. Imagine having on a strong pair of jeans and getting so big that you rip through them. And jean material is pretty tough. Wouldn't it have been easier just to take them off when the change started to occur and to put on something that would accommodate that new change? That's called adaptation. Not necessarily cultural and societal conformity. They're not ideas that necessarily work hand in hand with each other, just so you know. Okay. And I know a lot of times we struggle between the two of them, especially when we're dealing with like an ancient spiritual system, or we're dealing with ideas that other people may look at and say, oh, come on, man, you still doing that? You still on that? This is what we're doing now, man. It's a new world. Okay, well, determine if that new world that society has deemed as the norm is a life-bringing world, or if it's a death culture. Because you have to always understand your world, you have to be at the center of it all the time. That's your point of objection. So really, it's a subjective point. There really can never be any objectivity in reality when it comes to adaptation, because it's based on your adaptation has to be based on your purpose and your mission. Okay, so there really is no perfect and sustained objective viewpoint. Okay, but hanging on to certain ideas and norms and perceptions that don't take you to the next place has to be an internal decision where you decide, you know what, this isn't it. I can do better than this. I'm finding myself, regardless of environment, regardless of investment of spiritual system or whatever, I keep always finding myself in the same place. I keep finding myself with the same frustration. I keep finding myself surrounded by the same types of people. And I can't go through my life blaming everyone around me. At some point, I have to look at the common denominator. The common denominator is that bubble that you've been carrying around with you. You know, you can take someone in so many different environments, but if they don't want to take off their clothes, you know, to take a shower, but they say, no, this is my favorite coat, I'm never taking it off. You know, and you're taking them to the mosque and to the church and to the Kingdom Hall and to, you know, all these different places, taking them to the river. They won't take the coat off. They're going to stink. And it'll come to a point where they alienate everyone in the environments. Why? Because they stink. Because they're bringing something into that environment that's not fitting. That's not agreeable and enjoyable with the environment. You know, so many ways to test that out. So many ways to test that out. You know, you grab something that you consider to be synthetic or that's being presented to you in a certain way, and you place it into a natural environment and see if you feel and see a clash. You ever been hiking, walking through the woods and enjoying yourself, and then like a group of people will walk by you, or you'll see them somewhere and you'll be like, why are they here? You just feel it like, oh, they're messing things up. Maybe they're making a lot of noise, or, you know, oh, here's a good one. You ever been in a natural environment with somebody who's smoking cigarettes? And those of you know what I'm talking about. I ain't talking about cigar smoke, but a cigarette. And you see a cigarette in a natural environment, like you be in the woods, and there's something about it that's this is not right. This is not supposed to be here. You know. But yeah. So that's the science of adaptation. Your body is nothing but a set of clothes, and the tools that you have around you, look at them like clothes. Nobody wants to see somebody in the same thing every day. You know, we make fun of people like that who still wear hairstyles from 30 years ago, or clothes from 30 or 40 years ago, or whatever. We make fun of that. We say, oh, you're not keeping up with the times. you know. So give some thought to that. But some things that may have come a long time ago may still serve a certain purpose and may still be valuable. And you have to step outside with your Shango eye, your good eye, and take a bird's eye view and say, okay, now what still works here and what doesn't work? What haven't I touched in a whole year? What's just taking up space and is not working towards the purpose? And you can interchange the word what with the word who. And then you adapt your culture to accommodate the new place. Now that's a Thunderground Thursday topic. I know I'm talking all of the spiritual stuff, but you know why it's Thunderground Thursday? Because that's the reason why so many people can't seem to get the plane launched and off the ground. Because they're so afraid to relinquish the animal nature that they feel has protected their environment for years, and to take on the evolving divine nature. See, we're not animals. You know, people say, oh, men aren't humans just animals? No, humans are not just animals. It's like humans are not just machines. You know, sometimes we have that misconception. That's why even when we approach health, we say, well, eat this vitamin, eat that vitamin, eat that vitamin. Well, things have to happen in a holistic manner. Just like in your internal environment, there's got to be certain things present or you're going to have an imbalance. Sister Kim spoke about this in the alchemy webinar, where she covered the 6 primary elementals. Now, when you understand how those 6 primary elementals work, those are the composition of a divine being. We're dealing with metal, ether, fire, water, earth, air. And when those primary elementals, let me put this down. I got a razor blade over here I'm playing with, and I keep dropping it, so I know what happens next. I bleed. But when those 6 primary elementals lose balance within your system, you experience disease. And when the 6 primary elementals within you, when they disperse themselves, you die. So it's the coming together or the joining of those primary elementals that creates a divine being. And it's the separation of those things or the dispensation of those things that creates a slower energy, so that way it can come back together to high energy again and then create another being. It's always this constant process in life of coming together, breaking apart, which she also covered. Coming together, breaking apart. Well, that's what the divine does. It's one. It breaks apart into many, and then it comes back together into one. Then breaks apart into many, comes back together as one. Breaks apart into many, and it's just a continual, eternal process. And we have to adapt when we're moving closer to that breaking apart moment, because that breaking apart moment is the highest form of adaptation, because you're truly adapting to the highest forces and spirits of the environment by dying. All right. So that's been our Thunderground Thursday. Thank you all for listening. I will be here tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern for Foundational Friday. We'll be covering Lukumi tomorrow. Lukumi. We're going to get into that. That should be a good one for many of you, I hope, especially for those of you who are not familiar with Lukumi. All right. So make sure you tune into that. I am Chief Yuya. I don't think I introduced myself in the beginning of the segment. So for all of you first time listeners, please excuse my internet etiquette. But I am Chief Yuya, Chief Jegna of the Anu Spiritual Order and head instructor of the Sadulu House Spiritual Center. All right. And for those of you interested in classes or consultations or whatever, you can go right over to saduluhouse.com, which is SADULUHOUSE.com. And you can get all the information you need right there. All right. So until next time, peace, power, Uhuru Sasa, Hotep Pu. Let's see, what time is it? Majwo, Odara, and Odaba. Okay. Peace.